Okay, so in this last one, I wanted to show you how if if you wanted to have multiple versions of this gallery somewhere on the page, but maybe with different configurations, you could do that. The problem right now that I mentioned before is that we currently have some of our rules tied to the fact that these are IDs. Well, the problem with having IDs is that you're only really supposed to use an ID one time on a page, right? And so that becomes a little bit of an issue. Okay, to see what I'm talking about, if we wanted to take this entire, here, let's just collapse it. If we wanted to take this entire gallery right here, I want to copy it. And let's say that we wanted to come down here and let's say uh, this is, well, let's say is another gallery, right? And underneath we wanted to paste that same set of code. For right now, we'll just use the same set of code. The problem, if I collapse this, you can see it right off the bat, is that I have two galleries on the page with the ID of gallery. Well, that's not okay. You can't do that. The whole point of having something that is an ID is that it is a unique layout element. It's a unique thing on the page. So what we'd really need to do is we need to change this where it says ID. We'd need to change this to class. Because remember, with class, you can use it multiple times. But you'll notice, and when I say multiple times, you can use multiple instances of a class on the same page. Now, but the problem is I just lost all of my main styling, right? So what I need to do now is come down here and change this where it says UL pound gallery. I need to change that to dot gallery. And then this one needs to change to dot gallery. All right, and then this also needs to change to dot gallery. All right, and then that's pretty much it, right? That's how I could make this whole thing change so that now I've got a second gallery. And what you could do if you wanted, and say, let's instead in this second gallery, maybe instead of having classes on all of them, I mean, you could, maybe take the classes off of here. Let's just collapse all of these. Let's maybe take the classes out. We can just have an empty class for right now. Let's just do this. We can remove all of these, for instance. Okay, I just went ahead and did that so you don't have to watch. And then, so now they're all removed, but what we could come up here and do is, even though I've got class of gallery, I can also add, for instance, I can add 2. Let's say that I say that this is, okay, so what I did was I just added the class of 2 right here. And remember, we had this class down here. If you come down below, any list item that is inside of something called 2 gets 50%. And so this one is that. It's got 50%, or I could say 3, for instance. And then it would change over so that the second gallery is now in thirds. All right, and so I can have multiple instances now on the same page with different configurations. And then, if I wanted to also do something like, here, let's go ahead and leave that. I'm going to copy both of these. Actually, I'll copy this and I'll paste it down here. And I'll change this, let's go back here, and I'll change this UL. Actually, I'm going to change this to an H2, and I'll say this is, the third gallery. The third gallery. And then here where I've got gallery as my class, I can come down and I could change each one of these so that it's a completely different configuration with individual things working out. Like, so let's do that as a test. I'm just going to do it and then I'll show you. Okay, I just went ahead really quickly and I just did this as a third example where I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on the first row, and then I've got 1, 2, 3 on the second. On the third row, I've got 2, and then on the last one, I've got 1. All right, so you can see how you can kind of play around with these different grid options, and that's kind of cool, right? And if you want to look at it, see what it looks like at full screen, you can click on this little button. Yeah, and every once in a while, see, it didn't go for me. Every once in a while, that'll happen. So what I'll do is I'll save it, and then I will just click on the same thing again so it reloads the page. And then it should, if I click on it, there we go, it should go. And so then I get to see, this is that first gallery, this is another gallery where it's like all uniform, and this is the third gallery, right? And then you get this giant picture, right? So it's kind of interesting, right? And then if you, let's just close this up and go back. And then I'll just do my change view, come back here. And then if you wanted to, like, you know, try to limit the size of this so it doesn't get too big, you can also limit the UL gallery size. So you could say something like max width, and then maybe, I don't know, something like, let's say 800 pixels, just so that you can easily see what happens. We'll say 800 pixels, and then if that happens, then you see that it doesn't keep getting bigger, but maybe you want it to stay centered. So then in that case, just remember that you would have to set the margin for that parent, oops, I gotta spell it right. You gotta set the margin for that parent UL container. So that would be, let's just say auto all the way around for right now. And then you'll see that as it gets bigger, now it stays centered, right? But then, you know, you might also want to make sure that you do the same thing with the titles and so on, so that they will stay with it. The other thing that you could do is you could wrap all of this inside of something larger, that's not just the gallery, so that they all stay contained. So for instance, let's take this max width 800 and let's cut that. For instance, you could take all of these things here. Let's collapse all of this. Let's collapse the UL, all these ULs. Okay, so I could take all of these things, and just to be consistent, for this first one, we'll come down here and we'll make an H2 that is called first gallery. And like that. Let's just to be really succinct. And what I can do is I can highlight all of these things, and I can do my wrap, which is Command Shift A, or on Windows Control Shift A, and I could do something like create a div, all right, and then it's going to put everything inside of a div. And the reason I'm using div is because it's semantically unimportant. I could have also called it a section or something as well if I wanted. All right, and so the div, I could give it an ID of, let's call it wrapper, so that we know that it's called a wrapper. And then if I wanted, I could come down here and make something that was specifically a class for wrapper, and or excuse me, not class, an ID. It's an ID, so we'll make that a hashtag, and we'll tell it to have those same properties that we told it to have before, which was max width 800, margin auto. And then that way now you see that everything except for the H1 tag stays centered. So if you wanted the H1 tag to also stay align left with the left edge of the gallery, then you could also do that as well. The other thing that you could do is you could center the H1. So it's really up to you how you'd want to do that. So all you'd have to do is you'd have to cut the H1 and put it right inside the top part of the wrapper as well. And then you see that it all stays together. All right, so there's some different strategies that you can start to monkey around with in terms of positioning, using floats and using absolute and relative. We didn't really get into fixed in this assignment, but this should be enough for right now.